The courtroom was quiet that morning. Just the usual shuffle of paperwork, hushed conversations, and the soft echo of footsteps moving across polished floors. Most cases were simple parking violations, small fines, routine matters that people wanted to get over with quickly. No one expected anything unusual to happen, but then everything changed. The bailiff called the next case, and slowly a 92-year-old woman stepped forward. She wasn't just elderly, she was fragile. Her back curved gently as though time had rested its weight on her shoulders. She moved carefully, one step at a time, holding a worn wooden cane. The courtroom watched her, not with impatience, but with curiosity. Who was she? And why was someone her age facing a parking ticket in court? Judge Caprio looked up and immediately softened. There was something about her presence, quiet, humble, almost delicate, that shifted the energy in the room. Judge Caprio. Good morning, ma'am. Please take your time. No rush here. She nodded, grateful for his warmth, and approached the podium. Her voice when she spoke was soft, like someone who had seen much in life, someone who had learned to speak gently because the world was already loud enough. Woman. Good morning. Your Honor. The judge smiled kindly. Judge, I see you received a parking ticket near a no-parking zone. Would you like to explain what happened? No one expected anything remarkable. Most thought it would be the usual story, a mistake, misunderstanding, or oversight. But the way she paused, the way her hands trembled slightly on the cane, it was clear there was something more. She took a breath, one that carried years of memories, and began speaking, not like someone defending themselves, but like someone simply telling the truth of their life. In that moment, the courtroom leaned in, not out of curiosity, but out of respect. Because sometimes the most powerful moments do not come from loud voices or dramatic arguments. They come quietly, from people who have lived, from people who have loved, from people who carry stories heavier than any fine. And what this 92-year-old woman was about to say would make Judge Caprio stop the court completely, not because of the law, but because of the reason behind her actions, what she revealed next. No one in that courtroom would ever forget. The morning sunlight filtered in through the tall courthouse windows, giving the room a calm, almost gentle atmosphere. People were seated in rows, each waiting for their turn with a mixture of anxiety and impatience. Some stared at their phones. Others rehearsed explanations in their heads, hoping the judge would understand their side. But the moment the 92-year-old woman stepped forward, the room's energy shifted. There was no rush in her steps. No frustration. No excuses already prepared. Just a quiet dignity, the kind that comes from a lifetime of carrying responsibilities far heavier than a parking fine. Judge Caprio, known for his compassion and genuine interest in people's stories, folded his hands and leaned forward slightly, as if to meet her halfway. He was not just a judge in that moment. He was a listener. Judge Caprio. Ma'am, I see that you received a parking violation outside a restricted zone. Could you tell us what happened that day? The woman lifted her eyes, full of the wisdom that only age can give. There was no fear in her expression, just fatigue, the kind that settles in deep when you've lived long enough to understand that life doesn't always give easy days. Woman. Yes, Your Honor. I parked there because I didn't have any other choice. There was no anger in her tone, no defensiveness, just truth. The courtroom remained still. Even the officer who had issued the ticket lowered his gaze, sensing that this was not a trivial matter. Judge Caprio nodded patiently. Take your time. Please tell us what was going on. The woman took a soft breath, steadying herself. Woman. I was taking my son to the doctor. He's sick, very sick, and he can't walk anymore. I take care of him myself. A ripple of stillness passed through the room. Her voice didn't crack on, but hearts did. She continued. Woman. My son is 63. He has cancer, and we have no one else. I may be old, but I am his mother. I must help him. I will always help him. Her words were not dramatic. They were simply true, and because of that they struck deeper than any speech. People in the courtroom lowered their eyes, reflecting on their own lives, their relationships, their complaints, their impatience. Suddenly, the small problems that had felt big that morning began to feel very small. Judge Caprio didn't interrupt. He didn't fill the silence. He understood that some moments must be allowed to breathe. The woman continued, her voice barely above a whisper. Woman. I parked quickly because he was in pain. I didn't think about the sign. I just thought I needed to get him inside. I am sorry. I didn't mean to break any law. She wasn't defending herself. She was explaining a mother's love. And in that moment, the courtroom understood something that is so easily forgotten. You can be 92 years old and still be someone's mother. You can be fragile in body and still be fierce in loyalty. You can be exhausted and still refuse to give up. Judge Caprio looked at her for a long moment. The law was clear. But life is never simple. The courtroom remained completely silent after the elderly woman finished speaking. It wasn't the silence of boredom or impatience, it was the silence that comes when people are confronted with a truth they weren't ready for. A truth so human, so raw that it demands stillness. Judge Caprio slowly exhaled. He had heard thousands of explanations before, but this one reached deeper. This was not a story of carelessness or irresponsibility. This was a story of love stretched across 9 decades of life, but the law, as always, sat between them. The officer who issued the ticket stepped forward slightly. He wasn't arrogant. He wasn't defensive. He simply looked uncomfortable. He spoke softly, Officer, Your Honor, I was just enforcing the rules. That area is restricted because the sidewalk is very narrow. We've had issues with cars blocking access. His words were not cruel, just factual, but facts can feel cold beside compassion. Judge Caprio nodded. He wasn't looking to blame the officer. He understood that systems are built to be followed, yet sometimes systems fail to see the person. He turned back to the woman. Judge, ma'am, how long have you been caring for your son? The woman gripped the edge of the podium softly, gathering her breath. Woman, since the day he was born, Your Honor. And now again, since the day he got sick. Her voice held no complaint, no resentment, only devotion. A few people in the courtroom wiped their eyes. Someone in the back whispered, God bless her. The judge leaned slightly closer. Judge, do you drive him to his treatments yourself? She nodded. Woman, there is no one else to do it. His legs have gotten weak. He cannot lift himself. I have to help him in and out of the car. It takes time. I know I may not be strong, but I must try. The strength in her voice was quiet but unbreakable. The judge folded his hands, reflecting. He had seen wealthy individuals demand forgiveness without remorse. He had seen loud voices drown out reason. He had seen entitlement walk proudly into his courtroom. But this woman stood there with no pride, no demands, no sense of being owed anything. She was not asking for the ticket to be dismissed. She was simply explaining why she had no choice, and that was what made the moment so powerful. There was no performance here, no manipulation, no attempt to sway emotion, just a mother who loved her child. Judge Caprio could have made the decision right then. He could have dismissed the case instantly, but something told him to ask one more question, a question that would reveal the weight she carried each day. Judge, ma'am, are you receiving any help with his care? Any assistance? Any support? Her eyes softened with a kind of sorrow that only those who have endured quietly would recognize. Woman. No, Your Honor. It's just us, just me, and my boy. The words fell gently, but their impact hit like a wave. This wasn't just a parking violation. This was a reflection of life's hardest truth. Sometimes the world keeps moving, even while someone is breaking inside. And in that moment, the courtroom understood the real conflict. The law had spoken, but so had love, and now the judge had to decide which voice to honor. The courtroom remained still, wrapped in a silence that didn't feel heavy but sacred. Even those who had arrived impatient or irritated now sat quietly, their expressions softened. Something about the elderly woman's words had washed over the room like a gentle wave, reminding everyone of the things that truly matter. Love, loyalty, sacrifice. Judge Caprio leaned back in his chair, and for a moment he didn't speak. He simply looked at her, really looked. The way a person looks when they are trying to understand someone's entire life from just a few sentences. His voice, when it finally came, was softer than before. Judge, ma'am, I admire you, truly. What you're doing for your son, that is love in its purest form. The woman lowered her eyes, not in shame, but in humility. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't expecting praise. She was just a mother doing what she promised to do a long, long time ago. Take care of her child, no matter how old he becomes. A young man sitting in the back of the courtroom suddenly wiped his eyes with his sleeve. He had come in angry about his own ticket. Now his problems felt smaller, lighter, almost insignificant. The officer who had issued the ticket shifted uncomfortably, his stern posture dropping. He spoke softly. "Officer, I didn't know, I just thought it was a regular situation." His words weren't an excuse, but a realization. Rules are easy to enforce. Understanding is harder. She looked at him and gave a gentle, sincere smile. "Woman, you were just doing your job, dear. I have no anger toward you." Her forgiveness, as offered without hesitation, cut deeper than any criticism could have. The judge placed his hand over his heart for a brief second, a small gesture as if grounding himself before speaking again. "Judge, you said something earlier that stayed with me. You said, a mother never stops caring for her child. That is one of the most powerful truths I've ever heard in this courtroom." He paused, not for effect, but because emotion needed space to move. Around the room, people breathed differently, slower, softer, as if afraid to disturb the moment. This wasn't just a legal matter anymore. It was a reminder of something many had forgotten in the rush of life, that love can be quiet. That strength can look like frailty. That heroism can come with wrinkles and shaky hands. Judge Caprio glanced around the courtroom, almost as though acknowledging everyone's shared understanding. Then he turned back to her. "Judge, if every person showed the kind of devotion you show, our world would be a kinder place," the woman simply whispered. "Woman, I just do what any mother would do." But everyone in the room knew. Not everyone would. A few people softly nodded. Some clasped their hands. No one laughed. No one whispered. The courtroom, usually a place of arguments and pressure, had transformed into something else entirely, a place of human connection. And in that quiet, Judge Caprio prepared to give his decision, one that would stay in the hearts of everyone who witnessed it. Judge Caprio let out a slow breath, the kind that carries both thought and emotion. He closed the folder that held the woman's ticket, not with authority but with gentleness, as though even the paper deserved respect in that moment. He looked at her again, and there was no trace of the usual formality of the courtroom. No titles, no distance. Only human to human. "Judge, ma'am, I want to ask you something. Not as a judge, but as a son." The woman looked up, surprised. "Judge, you have taken care of your son for 63 years. You have carried him through childhood, adulthood, sickness, and pain. And even now at 92, you are still by his side. That is a love that cannot be measured by laws or fines." The woman's eyes filled, but the tears did not fall. She held them back the way strong hearts do. The judge continued. "Judge, I lost my own mother many years ago, and I would give anything, to have her here, to speak to her, to tell her thank you. Just one more time." The room shifted. Not just emotionally, but personally. Everyone suddenly seemed to think of someone they missed, someone they wished they had called, someone they wished they had thanked. A quiet ache filled the air. Judge Caprio leaned forward slightly, his voice low but steady. "Judge, your son is blessed to have you, and we are blessed to have heard your story today." He paused, not as a performance, but because there are moments when words need room to sit in the heart before continuing. Then he made his ruling. "Judge, your ticket is dismissed." The courtroom didn't erupt. There was no applause, no cheers, because this was not a victory. It was something far greater, a recognition of love. The elderly woman let out a breath she didn't realize she was holding. Not a gasp, not a sob, just a soft exhale. Like a bird finally able to rest its wings, she nodded gently. "Woman, thank you, Your Honor." Truly, Judge Caprio smiled, a sad, warm, understanding smile. "Judge, no, ma'am. Thank you. You have reminded us all of what really matters in this world." At that moment, even the officer bowed his head out of respect. People shifted in their seats with a kind of reverence, as though they had just witnessed something pure, untouched by ego, politics, or power. A mother's love. And a judge's humanity. The woman adjusted her cane, preparing to step away, but Judge Caprio spoke once more, softly. Judge, may God bless you, and your son. I hope he finds comfort and strength. And I hope you find some rest. She nodded again, her voice barely above a whisper. Woman. I will, dear. Thank you. She walked back through the aisle, slow but steady. No one looked away. Everyone watched her with respect. Some even stood. Not because she demanded dignity, but because she had earned it long ago. As the elderly woman made her way back to her seat, there was a noticeable shift in the atmosphere of the courtroom. The tension that often lingered in legal spaces, frustration, impatience, defensiveness, had dissolved completely. In its place was something gentler, something deeper, humility. No one checked their phones. No one whispered. No one hurried her. People simply watched, understanding that they were witnessing something rare, not a legal case, but a human moment. A young woman who had been sitting 2 rows behind her leaned forward and whispered softly to her friend. My mom complains about driving me to school. This woman, she's 92. Her friend nodded, silent, eyes shining with unspoken thought. These were not just words exchanged. These were realizations forming, quiet, personal, unforgettable. The officer who had issued the ticket walked to the side of the courtroom and stood there, his expression thoughtful. He wasn't ashamed. There was nothing to apologize for. He had done his job. But now he understood something the law alone could not teach. Context matters. Judge Caprio took a moment before calling the next case. He didn't rush forward. His gaze followed the elderly woman until she sat down, carefully, slowly, with dignity. Then he looked out over the room, his voice carried, not loudly, but with presence. Judge Caprio. What we witnessed just now is a reminder. Everyone who comes through these doors has a story. We must never forget that. Some people lowered their eyes. Others closed them. Everyone listened. Judge. The rules of the city matter. The law matters. But the purpose of the law is not just to punish. It is to bring justice. And justice cannot exist without understanding. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't preach. He simply spoke truth the way truth should be spoken, gently and clearly. A man in the back, and who had come in frustrated and ready to argue about his own fine, slowly sat straighter. He wiped his face with his palm, perhaps realizing something had shifted inside him too. The elderly woman, meanwhile, sat quietly. She did not bask in the attention or the admiration. She did not seem proud of what others saw as extraordinary. To her, love was simply a duty she had never questioned. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small photograph, her son in his younger years, smiling. She looked at it the way people look at their life in one glance, not with sorrow, not with regret, but with love. When the judge resumed the docket, the courtroom did not return to normal. Because normal had changed, people were softer, more patient, more aware. One case and one woman had reminded them, we all carry unseen struggles. We all love someone deeply. We all hope to be treated with compassion when our burdens become too heavy to hide. And sometimes the greatest acts of strength are the quietest ones. A mother who keeps driving. A judge who chooses empathy. A room full of strangers who remember what it means to be human. When the elderly woman left the courtroom that day, she didn't leave as someone who won a case. She didn't walk out with pride or satisfaction or triumph. She simply walked out the same way she had walked in, slowly, quietly, carrying a lifetime of love with her. But everyone who saw her leave left differently. Her story had reached them, not with dramatic speeches, not with grand gestures, but with truth. A truth that is easy to forget in a world that moves too fast. Everyone you meet is fighting a battle you know nothing about. She never complained. She never demanded anything. She simply told her story, and in it was a message more powerful than any law book could ever hold her. Story reminded people that strength does not always look strong. Sometimes strength looks like a 92-year-old mother, lifting her son with hands that have held him since the day he was born. Sometimes strength looks like a tired face that keeps going, even when the world doesn't see the effort. Sometimes strength is quiet, gentle, steady, unbreakable. And Judge Caprio, in that moment, showed another truth. Compassion is not weakness. Compassion is justice. He didn't dismiss her ticket because he felt sorry for her. He dismissed it because the law must always be paired with humanity, or it stops being justice at all. The courtroom that day didn't just see a judge. They saw a man choosing to understand. They didn't just see a woman. They saw a mother whose love refused to age. They didn't just see a parking case. They saw the beauty and the weight of life, and maybe, just maybe, everyone in that room walked out with a little more kindness than they walked in with. Because life is unpredictable. One day you are the person judging someone else's mistakes, and another day, you are the one hoping someone will understand yours. So before you raise your voice, before you make assumptions, before you react with anger, pause. Ask yourself, what battle might this person be fighting that I cannot see? Sometimes the most meaningful thing we can give someone is not advice, not money, not solutions, but grace, a moment of patience, a gentle word, a small kindness. Because whether you are young or old, rich or poor, strong or fragile, we all need compassion. The story of this 92-year-old woman and the judge who listened reminds us, love is timeless. Respect is universal. Compassion is the highest form of strength. So as we end this story, if you believe that kindness still matters, if you believe that the world could use a little more gentleness, if you believe that love is never a burden, type respect in the comments and tell me where you're watching from. I want to thank you personally for being someone who cares. Because at the end of the day, we all deserve to be seen. We all deserve to be understood. And we all deserve a little compassion,